Hello there, YouTube. This is part two of team MVPs for the entire Major League. So we're going to talk about the National League team MVPs, each team's player of the year. I am joined again by Abe Lou to help us with this part two. Abe, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. Just love talking baseball. It's like I think we just finished recording our AL content or AL MVPs. Some surprises, well, some were like, "Oh, I'm gonna lob it up to you." So I think there's a couple more of those. I know we talked about it off camera. There's one team in particular where it's like, I think my answer will surprise you a little bit. We'll just have to wait and see because I love kind of surprising people with these
Yeah,
with
we'll
these
see.
hot takes a little bit.
We'll see what these picks are. I'm gonna start with the National League East here. We're gonna start with the Atlanta Braves. A lot of guys had good seasons with the Braves. I think ultimately it came down to two guys. It was between Austin Riley and Freddie Freeman. If you
Yeah.
look at their stats, they essentially had identical years. So I'm just gonna quickly read off. Freddie Freeman hit 31 homers. He had 83 RBIs. He hit for a 300 batting average, and he had an 896 OPS. Austin Riley hit 33 homers, 107 RBIs, 303 average, and an 898 OPS. So
Mm,
you're talking average and OPS separated by 3 and 2.
that's crazy.
Very, very close. Freddie Freeman had the slightly higher WAR, but with that being said, I'm going to go with Austin Riley with the pick
Mm.
here.
While you pull up Austin Riley stats, a fun fact that I was talking to one of my friends about. I think the this year's Braves, the 2021 Braves, are the second team ever with all four of their infielders hitting 20 plus homers. So
Wow.
yeah, because I think it's like you have Austin Riley, Ozzy Albies, Dansby Swanson, and Freddie Freeman. They all hit like 20 plus, or it might be 30. I could be wrong, but it's like they're the second team ever to have every four of their infielders hit 20 plus home runs, which is just kind of an insane stat. Just want to throw that out there while you're
That
setting up
is
your
now that's
Austin Riley
impressive.
stats.
Yeah, we're going with Austin Riley here as the pick, but again, impressive season by Atlanta's infield there. So Austin Riley gets the pick here, even though it was very close. I mean, we're talking Freddie Freeman, last year's National League MVP, very
Yeah.
much in consideration for this pick. Real quick shout out: Ronald Acuna actually had the same WAR as Austin Riley. So again, we
Really?
talked about in the last
Wow.
video. Sometimes your best ability is availability. If Acuna plays the full year,
Oh no, he would have been the number
I think
one.
he
Absolutely.
runs away with this award. But
Yeah.
Austin Riley, you get the pick for this year. But Ronald, we are expecting big things from you. Hopefully, we
Yeah.
have a full healthy season next year. But let's move on to the Miami Marlins. Abe, who do you got with the Marlins?
Before we talk about the Marlins, I would agree with you with the Austin Riley pick because I think part of it is just out of curiosity. What was the war difference between Freddie Freeman and Austin Riley?
Yeah, so Fangraphs had Freddie Freeman's WAR at 4.5 and Austin
Hmm.
Riley's 4.2, so very close.
Okay, yeah, it's very close, and I think a thing a reason I would give the edge to Riley is because he plays third base. That is
That's
a
true.
much more defensively demanding position than first base. Like no knock on Freddie Freeman, but third base, you gotta have a lot of skill to play first base or third base. My
Yeah,
apologies.
no, I agree with you. Yeah, I think when it comes down to when it is so close, go with the position that's harder to play defensively. So,
Yeah.
yeah, great point.
Okay, to the Miami Marlins I go. So this one will be one of the few MVPs I guess where it's not an offense player. It's going to be a pitcher. And I had a couple of contenders. It was between Sandy Alcantara, Trevor Rogers, and Pablo Lopez.
Hmm.
I would give the edge to Trevor Rogers just because like he is 23. He has a smaller sample size, but it's like I think considering his sample size, it's just a kind of a projection more so because Sandy Alcantara is probably the best pitcher, but I also like to give some potential. And it's like just seeing these three pitchers pitch for the Marlins. Alcantara is 25, Rogers is 23, and Lopez is 25. If this pitching core can stay together, this team will be one of those scary teams to come in the future because we always make fun of the Marlins because they're like, oh, they're a constantly rebuilding team. They trade away their best players and all that. But if they can keep this core together, there's hope for them. And I want to just give potential nod here. So Trevor Rogers is my vote for the MVP for the Miami Marlins.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're spot on. This is one of the few teams where the award goes to a pitcher rather than any of the position players. Rogers
Mm-hmm.
was their lone All Star representative, so yeah,
There's
could
that
see
too.
that pick there. Moving on to the New York Mets. Now the Mets are a team that I'm also gonna go with a pitcher here.
Oh,
So another team that the MVP is coming from that pitching staff. Um, I think the one guy that was definitely in consideration was Marcus Stroman. He had a good
oh,
season, pretty good bounce back season, but he only had a 3.4 WAR despite his 33 games.
hmm.
He actually had a really good season. Believe it or not, and I know I'm kind of going against my thought process here with both like going with a pitcher instead of a position player and also going with the guy who missed time.
Sure.
But I can't pass up on Jacob DeGrom, man. He was
Oh,
incredible. In the 15 games that he only 15 games,
that's
only 92
insane.
innings pitched. But in that time, the guy managed to have a 4.9 WAR in 15 starts from as a pitcher. If he would have played the whole season, you're talking about a 10 WAR. Like he would literally be the National League MVP. And because the Mets didn't really have any guys stand out, like you could bring up Pete Alonso, who had a good season, but I mean DeGrom with the 4.9 WAR, 1.08 ERA. He had 146 strikeouts in those 92 innings. That's a strikeout percentage of 45.1%. Almost
That's
every other
insane.
batter he faces is striking out. At that point, you could just play the baseball without even having a defense behind you because he's probably getting out of the most innings without giving up a run. Um, Despite his injury, DeGrom gets the team MVP
That's a
award.
hot take.
Yeah, but I think the fact that this argument can even be made just shows how disappointing of a season that the Mets had because there was high expectations for the Mets. They had a big signing in Lindor. They even made a big midseason trade with Javi Baez.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the season fell apart for them, but DeGrom, despite his injury, man, he's getting the team MVP award.
You got me there. I was like, you're gonna talk about Strowman. I was like, he talked pitch. I was like, if he throws out the Jacob DeGrom, the name, I'm gonna just lose my mind. Like, I would agree with you. He was the most dominant pitcher, and he was like probably the most like that stretch of dominance he had from the beginning of the season to when he got shut down. That's just insane how dominant he was, and I'm like, it's unfortunate he got injured, but I think it just kind of shows promise. Like, it's like if we could talk about him as a team MVP, considering that he only played half a season. Imagine what he could be if he had a full season. And kind of, I think I mentioned this as a joke. I kind of feel bad for Garrett Cole. He gets paid $300 million, only to be the second best pitcher in New York. So kind of just a
Yeah.
slight jab at Garrett Cole, but I think that just shows the dominance of one Jacob DeGrom.
Yeah, DeGrom, your team MVP. But we'll move on to the Philadelphia Phillies. This might be one of those layups.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those layups. I think for me, I would say it's Bryce Harper. No surprise here, because I think part of it is like the Mets, the Phillies were a bit of a disappointing team,
Hmm.
just because they had these expectations, but they failed to make the playoffs. But Bryce Harper has to be the team MVP for me because you think about the Phillies, they were relatively disappointing, but considering that they were in the playoff picture for the longest time, granted, I think it's because by default we're in the NL East. It's a very easy division to win. Bryce Harper leads the team with a 5.9 WAR, 35 homers, batting 309, on base of 429, slugging 615 with an OPS of 1044. This is easily a layup, and it's like my main reason is he kept his team in the playoff picture much longer than they should have been in the playoff picture. So
Yeah,
Bryce Harper
good to see
is
this type of season from Bryce. I mean, we haven't really had seen like he's been good, but we haven't had seen him be this dominant since his
since
MVP year.
2015. Yeah,
Yeah.
since 2015.
How much consideration did like Zach Wheeler get from you with this pick?
Um, Not that much, just because, like I said, with pitchers, like you have that, like it's either your team is awful and you had no other choice but,
Yeah.
or you have to have a
You had to have a Jacob
mind
DeGrom level
blowingly
season.
good. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's no knock on Zach Wheeler because he had a great year. No, don't get
Yeah,
me
he did
wrong,
have a
but
good
it's just
year.
like Bryce Harper. I think part of it's like everyone's like he had a great 2015 year and then he kind of didn't have he couldn't replicate it. It's like this year I think it's kind of um a I'm trying to think of the word, a hint, a foreshadowing of what his potential still is. He's still
Mhm.
only 28 years old. He's been in the league for this was like his 10th full year in the league, I think, and he's still got a lot of baseball left in him. So
Yeah, he's still got a lot left in the tank. I mean, we're talking a guy who could, he's on track for 500 career home runs. So
yeah,
good season from Bryce. We might even talk about him later on in the video when we predict the league MVP
mm-hmm,
award.
mm-hmm.
But moving on to Bryce's old team, the Washington Nationals. another layup pick because anybody else who was like potentially in consideration got traded away at the during the
Yeah. Yeah.
midseason trade deadline. So easy pick. We're going with Juan Soto on this one.
Wow, I'm so shocked. What
Yeah.
do we do?
Soto had a good season. Another guy who, despite the team's performance, is in the race for NL MVP.
Hmm.
Slash line 313, 465, 534. So that comes out to be an OPS of 999. So he's right at that 1,000 mark.
Oh.
29 homers, 95 RBIs. Just a good, solid season from Juan Soto. I think this is the classic type of Juan Soto season that we can expect to see. The guy's 22 years old. 22 years. Hey, what are you 24 right now?
I'm 20.
Are you 25 right now?
I'm 24. I'm 24.
You're 24. Juan Soto's
Uh,
2 years younger than you. He's been in the major leagues for what, 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
We're gonna talk. I mean, as long as he's on the Nationals, he's probably the team MVP for as long as he's there. So
Yeah.
Juan Soto, easy pick there from me. Moving
Hmm.
on to the National League Central, though, we're gonna start with the Chicago Cubs. Go ahead, Abe.
All right. So, as we kind of said with the Nationals, like in terms of MVPs, like a lot of the players that could have been in consideration for MVP for the Nationals, they got traded away. My player will be someone that got traded away. So it's Craig
Wow.
Kimbrell. But
Wow.
I think, yeah, part of it is like I said, because there's no one of note that was like, oh, they stayed on the team long enough to be considered. For this one, because I think for the Cubs, they kind of knew they weren't going to be contenders, so they kind of went into a wholesale fire sale. They traded away Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Craig Kimbrell, Andrew Chafin, Chris Bryant. I was like thinking like, okay, this is going to be the most unconventional answer. It's got to be who got the best trade value, and which is why I chose
Wow.
Craig Kimbrell.
I
So
like your thought process there.
yeah, so with this, I think it's good. It's the best trade value because you get two major league ready players. The White Sox traded away two major league ready players already who have had major league experience to the Cubs for Kimbrel.
Who?
They
What,
traded
who were
away
those?
Nick Madrigal and Cody Hewer. I
Okay.
think that's how you
Yeah,
pronounce
yeah,
his last
yeah.
name. And I was like, Madrigal's going to be a really good player, so that's why I was like, I have to lean towards this one just because this one is one of those, like, as we said, it's no easy answer. So I kind of thought out of the box. I was like, whoever got the best trade value out of these players would get my nod, and that's why I gave it to Craig Kimbrell on the Cubs because this year was a lost year. They were like, we're going to give it a shot, and then once they realized, like, oh, we're not going to contend, like, all right, sell everybody or trade everybody. Let's see what we can get. And I just think the Nick Madrigal Cody Hewer trade is probably the best value they can get out of the players they traded for.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, like you said, the Cubs didn't really have anybody of note who played the full season there. I like your thought process here. I think that's an excellent way to go about this. And like you said, Madrigal is a solid, major league second baseman, and Cody here is a good bullpen piece. I'm actually surprised that they got that from a reliever. So that's
For a rental too. Not only
yeah,
that, like
that
if it
is
was
impressive.
if it was a player that's like, oh, still had like 2-3 years of control, like I'm like, okay, that's a relatively good trade. But for a rental piece, I was like, wow.
Yeah, well,
Okay, okay.
that is impressive. So Kimbrel gets the nod. I like it. Moving on to the Cincinnati Reds. Reds had a lot of guys have pretty good seasons offensively. Votto had a bounce back year. Jesse Winker had a pretty solid year, although he kind of cooled off towards the end of the year. Um, Quick shout out to Jonathan India, who had a really good rookie season. I was very impressed by him. But the
Might be
guy,
NL Rookie of the Year front
yeah,
runner.
might be NL Rookie of the Year, and might be a guy where if we have this conversation next year, he might be the team MVP. But for this particular season, I'm going to go with Nick Castellanos. I think Nick Castellanos had the best season amongst all those guys that I mentioned. You're talking 34 homers, 100 RBIs, 309 batting average, OPS of 939. So it's a really
Wow.
good season from Nick Castellanos. Very solid year. The Reds didn't exactly have the season that they wanted, but he had he had the type of season where if they were in the playoffs, he could have serious consideration for league MVP. That's the type of
Yeah.
year he had. So Nick Castellanos gets the nod here for the Reds. Moving on to the team that did win the NL Central, the Milwaukee Brewers. Who do we have?
Uh gonna be a pitcher. So quick story,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a pitcher. I think who I think is the front runner for Cy Young. It's got to be Corbin Burns for the
Yeah.
Milwaukee Brewers. Like I'm just looking at his stats again. He had a 5.7 WAR as a pitcher, which is pretty good. Granted, his counting numbers are a little bit on the lower side. He only pitched 167 innings, but he had a 234 strikeouts and a .94 WHIP, which is just insane. So I think it's like with the Brewers, like in previous years, you would have thought like, oh, the best offensive player in that case it would have been Christian Yelich in 2018 and 2019. But this year, because of the fact that it's like this year, the Brewers were like when you think of the Brewers, you thought about their pitching. You thought of Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta. And out of those, I was like, Corbin Burns was the best out of the three, and because I think he's going to win NL Cy Young, kind of straightforward. It's like he's got to be the team MVP. So Corbin Burns is my pick for the Milwaukee Brewers MVP.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent pick. It had to be a pitcher for those guys, and you're right. Corbin Burns was the best among them. He probably will win NL Cy Young award, mostly because Jacob DeGrom is hurt. But yeah, Corbin Burns, great season from him. If that's the type of season they're gonna get from Corbin Burns, then they have a bona fide ace for a long time. All right, moving on to the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is a team that it was a bad team, but had one really good player in particular. That player is Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds actually had a very, very good season. And he played center field. So we're talking a guy who plays a premium defensive position. 24 homers, 90 RBIs. He hit for batting average of 302 and an OPS of 912. Just a very solid season from Brian Reynolds. It kind of came, as a surprise.
Yeah.
But if this is his norm, he's only 26 years old. He could be a really good player for a long time. So Brian Reynolds, you're the team MVP for the Pirates. Not a lot to choose from. I mean, there wasn't much to go with, but he had a 5.5 WAR. So very good season for Brian Reynolds.
Sure.
Let's move on to the St. Louis Cardinals. A lot of guys to pick from on this team.
Yeah, I think part of it was I was not blind. I was mesmerized because they made such a strong push to that second wild card spot. They gave us a great wild card game because I remember you and Zach did a live stream for the AL wild card. I was like, bro, this game's boring. The NL wild card game was fascinating, so kind of just wanted to give a quick shout out to that. But for me, because of I feel like the Cardinals are kind of a team of the sum. They're greater than the sum of their parts. So I was like, let me just kind of be very safe with the look at the player with the highest WAR.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Tyler O'Neill. But I think looking at his stats, I'm like, I can easily see why he could be considered a team MVP. He batted 286, 352 on base, 560 slugging, with a 912 OPS, with 34 homers and 80 RBIs. The fact that he can have these numbers on a team where I think he was from what I've heard, he was the catalyst for that. I think it ended up as a 17-game win streak, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fact that he was the catalyst for that, I think, because that just helped them not just sneak in, but help them will their way into the playoffs. You got to give it to someone that was like the catalyst for that win streak to get them to where they were before they lost to the Dodgers in walk-off fashion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here on this pick. You're right. Like, he obviously had a good season. A lot of guys on the team had good seasons. Goldschmidt, Arenado had a pretty solid year. Harrison Bader was pretty good. But the fact that Tyler O'Neill basically, his hottest month of the season corresponded with their win streak, I think it's kind of the, he gets the nod here. So, yeah, Tyler O'Neill with the pick for the St. Louis Cardinals team MVP. And now we'll be moving on to the NL West, starting with the Arizona Diamondbacks, who maybe
real quickly. Don't forget, it's the NL Best.
The NL Best, not just the NL West. Yeah, the NL Best, other than the Arizona Diamondbacks, because they were maybe
Poor Diamondbacks.
Were they the worst team in baseball? They might.
I think they were tied with the Orioles, if I'm not mistaken. I remember I was following it very closely.
Not a lot went right for them this year. I'm going with Ketel Marte. It's just easy pick. He missed a lot of time. He still led the team in WAR. He had a 2.9 WAR in 90 games. The fact that a 2.9 WAR led the team in WAR, I think says a lot, especially when that guy only played 90 games. I'm giving it to him, though, because if he would have played the full year, you're talking like all-star level season. He had a pretty good year. He hit 318. His OPS was 909. He plays center field. So Marte is the guy. He seems like he's been that. He would have been team MVP probably for the last, 3 or 4 years. Easy pick here, mostly because the team was just that bad.
Just to confirm, the Diamondbacks were unfortunately tied with the Orioles with the worst record. They both had a 52-110 record.
Wow, yeah, not a good year by any means. But Ketel Marte, you still managed to win Team MVP. I think it says more about your
Here's your
team than
star
it
for you,
does.
my friend.
Yeah. But the Colorado Rockies, another team that had a disappointing season in the NL West.
Yeah, I think this one is a bit of a layup. I think not necessarily because of the stats. He had great stats, but I think it's more so the chatter around him. It's going to be Trevor Story in my opinion. Like he had a 4.2 WAR, which isn't like horrible, and or it's still the highest unfortunately, but it's like you could have done a little bit better. 251 average, 329 on base, 471 slugging, 801 OPS. I think for me it's just the fact that you kind of kept the Rockies relevant because like everyone leading up to the trade deadline because Story is going to be like this year is going to be an interesting year for shortstops just because there are 3 premium shortstops, if not more, entering the free agent market because you have Corey Seager, Carlos Correa,
Yeah.
and Trevor Story all hitting the market. And Trevor Story had the weakest season out of the bunch, and the fact that the Rockies didn't trade him, I think, was the biggest storyline for this year because it's like, oh, he's going to be a free agent. You should trade him to get some value. You weren't even contending, so when they didn't trade him, I was like, oh, Rockies, you done boof this situation. You're gonna let Trevor Story walk away for nothing. You look like a laughingstock. You kind of are already. So, yeah, just because you kept the Rockies somewhat relevant until July, Trevor Story, you're the Colorado Rockies MVP.
Down year for Trevor Story, but he still managed to lead them in WAR. Still, he's a good baseball player. He still gives a lot of value. I think CJ
Yeah.
Crone deserves a shout out because he had a pretty
Yeah,
solid year. But
he plays
yeah,
first
I,
base.
I can't
So,
argue with I can't argue with the Trevor Story pick. So Story, you get the nod here. Moving on to the LA Dodgers, a stacked team full of so many guys that could win this award.
uh,
Um, I'm actually gonna go a pitcher on this one, and the reason why I'm going away from the lineup is because they had so like you're talking Max Muncy, Will Smith, Justin Turner. They added Trey Turner to the list. They had Mookie Betts. Like
oh,
so many guys that I think
Corey
it's
Seager,
Corey Seager.
yeah,
Like it's really hard to be like there's one of those guys that was so much better than the rest, and it's
yeah,
hard for any of them to be a real team MVP when if for some reason one of them struggled, there was so many other guys and even guys on their bench that could play well. I mean, Chris Taylor, like they just were stacked. So I'm
yeah.
gonna go with pitching here. They have 4 elite pitchers. Kershaw got hurt though, so he missed time. Max Scherzer got
Hmm.
traded midseason, so it comes down to Julio Urias and Walker Buehler. Julio Urias led the league in wins, 20-win season, so great season from him. But I'm
The
going
only
Walker
21
Buehler.
season this year. Yeah.
Yeah, going Walker Buehler. He had a 2.47 ERA compared to Urias's 2.96, so he's half a run lower. Um,
Yeah.
Walker Buehler, he gets the nod here, but yeah, I mean a lot of guys to choose from. Do you agree with that pick, or is there maybe like another
I,
guy you would have considered?
I think it's relatively close because I was saying like, I, I mean considering that Walker Bueller was in Cy Young contention for the most part this year, kind of
Mm-hmm.
plays a testament to how they were this year. So I can't disagree with that pick. But like, yeah, the offense is just so stacked. It's like if you choose an offensive player, it's kind of you're taking it away from other offensive
Yeah,
players. So it's like kind of you're like, oh, Max Muncy's MVP. Oh, how are you going to ignore Corey Seager's or Mookie Betts this year? So it's like you're kind of taking a cop out answer. I'll say that in my opinion, but it's a horrible
taking
cop
the
out answer.
easy way out.
Exactly.
So Buehler is a team MVP for the Dodgers, for the stacked Dodgers. But now we're gonna move on to probably the most disappointing team in the NL West,
Absolutely,
the San Diego
absolutely.
Padres. Go ahead and talk about the Padres season a bit.
Yeah, I mean they were a good team last year. They surprised a lot of people making the postseason, but making the postseason, kind of faltering a little bit against the Dodgers. But I mean the Dodgers are the Padres' big brother. Everyone's like, oh, this year it's gonna be Dodgers and Padres the entire year.
Maybe the two best
Um,
teams, right? Preseason,
yeah,
those are
yeah.
the two best teams in baseball.
Yeah, the fact that they're like, oh, it's gonna be a shame that someone's gonna like one of these teams is gonna have to go to the wild card game. They were great up until the All Star break, and then I think just some inexperience as well as their manager who already
Bad
got fired.
manager, yeah.
Kind of like, I think he was kind of the fall guy, unfortunately. But it's like the fact that they kind of faltered, it was unfortunate. But the lone bright spot, I wouldn't say bright spot, but like kind of like he's kind of being marketed as the next Mike Trout. It was like, oh, the best thing since sliced bread. Fernando Tatis Jr. has to be the MVP for the Padres. 6.6 WAR, which I'm pretty sure leads the team. 282 average, 364 on base, 611 slugging with a 975 OPS, 42 homers, 97 RBIs, and he had 25 steals. So
And he missed some time.
yeah, which is unfortunate. Imagine because
We're talking a 40-30 season potentially if he was healthy.
yeah, he missed. He played 130 games this year. So imagine if he had the full slate. Maybe he could have made a push for 50 homers.
Maybe 50-30. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, even with the season that the Padres had and even him missing time, he's still in consideration for league MVP.
Yeah.
If somebody would have showed you, because Manny Machado had a good year too. If somebody would have showed you Manny Machado's stats and Fernando Tatis' stats before the season started, what would you have predicted their record to be for the year? If you just saw their two stat lines.
I thought they would have been second in the NL West.
I mean, if you just saw those two, like if I saw Machado's season stats and Tatis, I would have said like, oh yeah, they won 100 games. Like they won 100 games.
Like high 90s, because I think because of the Dodgers being in their division, it would have been a little bit harder. I would have said like maybe 96 to 99 wins.
Yeah. So very disappointing season for them because they got production out of their two best players and it didn't amount to anything. So
yeah.
Disappointing season for the Padres. Tatis, he gets the nod here for team MVP. I think another one of those layup picks. Now we're moving on to my San Francisco Giants, who
your team.
Yeah, we've talked about in a previous video a team that has a lot of good players, but not necessarily like a star player. Although I do think that there was one guy that stands out amongst the rest, and that is Brandon Crawford. I think it's a combination of the season he had, but also the position that he plays and the value he brings as a shortstop, both with the glove, but also with the bat, especially coming from the middle infield. 24 homers, 90 RBIs, 298 average, which is ridiculously high for him, especially because his career average is 254. So big season from Crawford, his best season of his career. It's crazy that you look at that season Crawford had, and he might not even win Silver Slugger as a shortstop in the NL because of Tatis. But with even that being said, he's in consideration for MVP, although I think he's on the outside looking in. But I mean, you're talking best record in baseball. He was the best player on the best team. Easy pick. Yeah. Brandon Crawford is the Giants team MVP.
The only thing I can say is I don't think he'll be a finalist because I think the finalists are from non-contending teams. But if Brandon Crawford does not get MVP votes, that will be a travesty of the highest order. That's all I can say.
I think he should finish probably somewhere between fourth or fifth.
He's got to be 4th or 6th. Yeah.
Posey would have gotten some consideration if he played more.
They found the Fountain of Youth.
They found the Fountain of Youth. Posey only played 113 games though, so if he would have played more, I think he was about a 4.9 WAR. Crawford was at a 5.5. So, I mean, obviously the reason why Posey doesn't play is because he gets rested. But if Posey managed to get 130, 140 games in, I think he was. Yeah. I mean, he could have even been in consideration for NL MVP. But that was it. We just went through all 15 NL teams and we named their player of the year, their team MVP. Before we finish this video off, who do you think wins National League MVP, Abe?
Oh, so I think for me, I kind of foreshadowed it with my team MVPs. I think it's going to be Bryce Harper just because, I think the 3 contenders, I think in whatever order, it's Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, and Fernando Tatis Jr. Because of, I don't think this award should be team success based, but because of the fact that the Padres were such a disappointing, they were such a letdown, I feel like that will take votes away from Tatis Jr. And then for Soto, it's he was on a last place team. It's I think the only way you can win an MVP on a last place team is if you are head and shoulders
historic triple crown. Yeah,
exactly. It's no knock on Juan Soto, but it's the Bryce Harper. It's he kind of without Bryce Harper, the Phillies might have been 5th place in the NL East. So it's because of that, he kept them in the race for much longer than they should have. I would give it to Bryce Harper for the NL, but it's just all 3 players are great players. It's just a matter of it's unfortunate that I have to have team success as the tiebreaker for this race in particular.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm using team success as the tiebreaker because I think all 3 were pretty close. No one had a crazy year. This wasn't insane MVP. Whoever wins MVP this season, not that it's going to be forgotten by any means.
You can't disagree with who wins MVP.
Yeah, it's just, they had 3 good years, but I'm going to go with Bryce Harper as well. because his team was, in it for the longest. So you heard it here. Those are our team MVPs. Those are our National League MVP predictions. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to your favorite baseball channel. We'll be doing more videos like this. Thanks again so much, Abe.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Any parting words?
No, I kind of want to get your on-air reaction. For my Cubs pick, I think that threw you for a loop.
That was a very good thought process. I like that a lot. Thank you so much for joining, Abe, and thank you all for watching. We will be back soon.
Peace.